I am finally going to be building this Darksaber. It's been almost 2 years since I signed up to be a part of this limited edition run, so I am so excited to finally bring this to life. Let's get started with the parts. This is a custom blade by the Saber Trade made exclusively for this run of hilts, and this is the chassis by Shadowfoil Props, and the custom blade contacts. The saber uses a standard plunger style button, along with a momentary tactile switch. It also requires 16650 lithium-ion batteries, which I've never used, and these new battery contacts. And of course, I'm installing it with the CFX soundboard. Lastly, we have the power switch, 1.3mm recharge port, and 28mm premium speaker. With that out of the way, it's time for the install. I think I'm going to start by soldering the pins to the blade connector. This hilt requires a lot of parts that I've never used before. Not only is that due to the unique shape of the Darksaber blade, but also the oval shape of the hilt. So to account for the screen-accurate emitter, this custom blade connector had to be made thin and rectangular rather than circular. And now we're going to move on to the button solution. I think I have to cut out the cylinder to make this work. With the cylinder removed, I just want to clean up the extra plastic on both the parts. So I think what the cylinder is used for is it goes on the bottom of the plunger button to act as an extender. Okay, so it did require some off-screen sanding and drilling to make it fit, but I got it working. Now let's wire up the switch on the chassis that the plunger button is going to be pressing. This is only going to be a one-button setup, so this was probably the easiest part of the whole build. But now it's time to move on to installing the battery tabs. The first step was cutting off all the excess metal to make it fit. But the second step was the same as usual, just soldering on the positive and negative wires. And then I added a second positive wire that'll go straight to the connector. This way I'm dealing with less wires and it's just overall simpler. And lastly, to finish up the top part of the chassis, I'm just using some Loctite to secure the button in place. After putting the battery tabs into their respective slots, we have now completed the top half of the chassis. So with the blade connector, button, battery tabs, and plunger switch all ready to go, we can now move on to the next part, the recharge port. I don't install recharge ports very often, let alone the 1.3mm one that this is, and I'm not sure I'm going to be using it very much, but here it is anyways. And now for a part I do normally use, the power switch. We just have to solder on the two positive wires and then push the switch into the chassis. With the power management solutions out of the way and installed, we can now move on to the speaker. This is the 28mm premium speaker, which again, I have not really used before. I mainly use the 28mm bass speakers, but that won't fit in this hilt. The great thing is that installing the speaker is pretty much exactly the same. Supposedly, these premium ones have better highs, but we'll see when we test it out. Now it's time for the final and most important part of the hilt, the soundboard. As with pretty much all of my personal lightsabers, I went with the 9-axis CFX board. And with that, the final piece is installed. I'm going to set up the SD card off camera, but when I come back, it's time to light it up. Alright, so far so good. The button, power shift, and speaker are working, and the speaker sounds pretty good too. Let's put it all in the hilt so that we can try the plunger button, and then the final test will be the blade. I will say that there's one downside with this hilt. There's not very good sound venting, so unfortunately the sound is going to come out a little bit muffled. Let's see how it goes. So it's not too bad, but definitely not as loud as the speaker outside of the hilt. But now that we know the button works, it's time to put in the blade. Look at that. This is my first time having an RGBW blade and it looks amazing. I also love how you can see the light shining through the windows on the hilt. But now I can say that the lightsaber is officially completed. I do have a few upgrades in mind, but in the meantime, let's check out what this can do. I am so happy with how this turned out. I've been waiting for this project to be completed for a very long time. I joined Malibu's Darksaber run on the RPF back on December 23rd, 2020. It is now November 2022, so it's almost been 2 full years, but I have to say that it was well worth the wait. I absolutely love this thing. The hilt looks and feels super high quality. The blade is incredible, I've never had anything like it before. And now that this thing is finally installed, I can call this project complete. I will be doing a couple upgrades to this in the future, but for now, thanks for watching.